large amounts of soap and water, if you ingest it, it said induced vomiting. Dilute with milk or water-induced vomiting. Okay, but now here it is. I think this is at one of the plants where they put the water into they put it into the water supply. But look at the guy. The guy, he's
Great.
Yeah.
He got the triple filter on there.
He got the
Yeah, he got yeah, come on.
You didn't even inhale it.
And they've been doing that for how many years now?
right. Right.
Will a filter on the main tap and on the faucet take it up?
You said take it.
You can put a filter on the main tap from the city and on the actual faucet that comes out. Would that take out?
The Brita.
It don't work?
And then
Not a
then
Brita, it's something more intense than like it's a filter.
they did a study on Philadelphia's water, right? Oh, he's showing you. So it's like
Granular.
toxic.
Tox. Wow.
Mm.
Well, you're proud of yourself, buddy.
Well, he's trying to show people, look, this
Oh,
is what's
okay.
happening.
Oh, okay.
Okay, but now, who was
Talking
it?
about
that-
water.
They did the study on
Yeah,
the water.
they did a study on the water, right? They found, I think it was like 64 chemicals in our water, right? They were finding Tylenol, acetaminophen, what they call it?
Dead.
Hormones, all these different things in the water because people flush the water. I mean, flush their medicines down the toilet and stuff.
Oh, okay.
So it gets into the water supply and there's nothing to take it out. All right. And it was one place where the guy was saying, he said, yeah, the frogs in this particular place where they were getting to that water was turning from male to female.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Okay. There was a doctor, a black doctor, who worked for a company, and they asked him to, study their chemical. It was a chemical that they was using as a pesticide, and the runoff water was getting into the streams and stuff. They wanted him to study the effects, and that's what was happening. The frogs were turning from male to female. The fish, I think, were turning also from male to female also. So it was like all of these different chemicals that they were putting in there. So it's like, wait a minute, what does that happen? What happens to a human being then if they're taking this stuff?
Right. Right.
Okay, so it's very, very interesting, this stuff that they got going on. But I'm going to skip this one because I want you to see this thing called Agenda 21. More so the commercials for it. Okay, but this was something that was passed, and I think in the 90s. Okay, called Agenda 21.
At its core, Agenda 21 is about control. Control of the land, natural resources, and entire populations. It seeks to control the air by regulation of carbon emissions, the ground by sustainable development, and the sea through environmental regulations. Officially stated, Agenda 21 is a comprehensive plan of action to be taken globally, nationally, and locally by organizations of the United Nations system, governments, and major groups in every area in which human impacts on the environment. Because being human will always have an impact on the environment, Agenda 21 paves the way for extraordinary UN control. When you boil it down, there are 9 basic tenets of Agenda 21. Move citizens off private land and into urban housing. Create vast wilderness spaces inhabited by large carnivores. Eliminate cars and create walkable cities. Support chosen private businesses with public funds for sustainable development. Make policy decisions that favor the greater good over individuals. Drastically reduce the use of power, water, and anything else that creates carbon pollution. Use bureaucracies to make sweeping decisions outside of democratic processes. increase taxes, fees, and regulations. And finally, implement policies meant to incentivize a reduced population.
This equation has four factors, a little bit of multiplication. So you've got a thing on the left, CO2, that you want to get to zero, and that's going to be based on the number of people, the services each person's using on average, the energy on average for each service, and the CO2 being put out per unit of energy. So let's look at each one of these and see how we can get this down to zero. Probably one of these numbers is going to have to get pretty near to zero. That's back from high school algebra. But let's take a look. First, we've got population. The world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, healthcare, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%.
Now, listen to what he said. If we do a really great job on new vaccines, healthcare, reproductive health services, or abortions, right? We could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15. Now, think about it. Remember a couple of presentations ago, I showed you a video with Miley Cyrus, and she had a cake. And what did it say? Abortion is health care.
That's
Remember that?
sure did.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing. All right? Same thing.
So Rashid, okay, and this is from my perspective, it look a little demonic, right? Because when you think about healthcare, you think about growing human population.
Right.
And they talking
least
about
sustainable.
healthcare as the opposite.
Now, you said it seems a little demonic.
Yeah.
It is demonic. This is Shaitan's system. This is what people keep forgetting. This is not man's system. This is Shaitan's system. And he manipulates man to carry it out through his whispers.
Right.
Right? Here we go.
The urge.
These were the commercials that they were putting on for this Agenda 21. Check this out. This was on Dish Network.
Handle. And to incentivize a reduced population.
The Earth just cannot handle the sheer number of humans who live here. Something has to give. And I believe that it's up to us who have lived a good life to make sure that our children will have the opportunity to live good lives too. I have lived a good life.
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 Finally, implement policies meant to incentivize a reduced population.
Second.
Every year, millions of imperfect babies are born, destined for a life of struggle and hardship. But it is the rest of us who pay the ultimate cost. Billions of dollars that could be used to better society are instead wasted on the malformed. There must be a better way, and there is. Agenda 21 is coming soon.
Finally, implement policies meant to incentivize a reduced.
I thought somebody was playing around with these commercials. They were real.
Man.
They were showing them on Dish Network. Okay?
For millions of years, this lake thrived. But now it is dying. Poisoned by humans who put themselves above nature. It's time to stop the killing. It's time to heal our planet.
Finally, implement policies meant to incentivize a reduced population.
What's ironic?
It's time to remove your footprint. Agenda 21 is coming soon.
Control.
What's ironic is that the individuals having the most impact on environmental degradation are not the ones we're talking about. At all, like not even by any stretch of the imagination.
Right. What's important? Read Sword to Bucker, in the beginning of sort of the book, no, I'm sorry, not the beginning. Is it in the beginning? Might be either in the beginning or towards the end, but when he talks about Shaitan and how he's saying, give him respite. And he would show Allah that we're not worthy of, you know, his feelings towards us. But check it out, because it's deep. Because he talks about how he would prove that we weren't. And Allah countered that by giving us this guidance. And if we stick to that guidance and we adhere to that guidance, we're protected from it. Okay? But it's
Impact on the environment means controlling every aspect of our lives. What we eat, how we travel, where we live, how we live. But no is still an option. At its core.
But now, let me show you how this is being, you don't even know some of the things that they're doing. Watch this. This is called BPA. Anybody heard of BPA?
When you open up a can, you may not notice the lining inside, but believe it or not, that lining may contain a synthetic estrogen. That's right, a sex hormone, and it's in almost every single can we consume. As part of a Fox 5 investigation, we decided to have some of the cans of food you eat every day tested, and wait until you see the results. This could be your table any day of the week. A delicious plate of pasta, topped with tomato sauce, some hearty soup, a tuna fish sandwich, a side of green peas. Food that millions of Americans consume daily. But wait until you see what could be inside your food.
This is a chemical that the people who put it into plastic were insane.
His name is Dr. Fred von Saal. He's a professor of biology at the University of Missouri. You may not know his name, but you probably know his work. He recently created a huge uproar within the scientific community after releasing a study on plastic baby bottles and the controversial chemical many of these bottles are made with, called bisphenol A.
This is a chemical that in 1936 was considered for use as an estrogen drug. Then in the 1950s, some tricky chemists found that they could link this chemical together and it creates a hard, clear, glass-like plastic.
And this glass-like plastic is sprayed into cans we buy every day.
The only problem with that is the plastic is then made from a sex hormone.
And it's virtually in every can of food we consume. And according to Dr. von Saal, bisphenol A is a big problem because he says it leaches into the foods we eat.
And when you heat this plastic or put tomato sauce in it, the acid degrades the plastic, and then the food that's in there is full of this sex hormone.
Dr. von Saal says they have tested bisphenol A in animals, and the results are disturbing.
We started testing it at levels tens of thousands of times below what anybody had ever tested before, and found that it profoundly damaged the male reproductive system. Now we know causes brain damage, and it causes breast cancer and prostate cancer.
So we decided to do our own.
The rise in people get all these different cancers.
Yes.
Right?
The great time to sponsor commercials come on every 5 seconds.
How about that?
All right.
That's true. Common foods we eat every day. We went to different grocery stores and purchased tomato sauces, soups, peas.
But see, it's funny when you said that, it makes me think about the word pharmakia, right? Which is it's a Greek word that means to poison. But this is where we get the word pharmacy from. The word means sorcery, and it means to poison. So think about when you hear those commercials, talk about the medicine, and then they give you all these side effects.
Right. Yeah, you
Yeah. One of my favorite was one of my favorites was suicidal thoughts. But I know a doctor tried to put me on the medication one time, and I was reading through it, and it says, You can get moon face.
What's that?
Moon face. What the heck is moon face? Your face becomes rounded.
It's a steroid. If you stay on the steroid for a certain amount of time, or a long length of time, that's what happens. You get a moon face.
Wow.
You get a moon face. And there are people who have to stay on steroids because of different breathing difficulties, different things that are wrong.
Yep.
And when you see that moon face, you know that person has been on that steroid. Because steroids are supposed to be, you're not supposed to be on them for a long
Temporary,
time.
right.
It's
You're
temporary.
supposed to be weaned off of them. You
Mhm.
can't just stop them either. You're weaned off of them. But there are people who've been on them for a long, long time and they wind up.
Moon
See,
face.
black man said moon face. No.
Cool.
Y'all keep your moon face. I don't want that.
Oh
Kids be
my
scared of you.
goodness.
as well as plastic containers and food wraps. We then sent them all to Dr. Von Saul's lab in Missouri for testing.
The food was removed from the cans. The cans were all cleaned, washed multiple times with water, allowed to dry, and then we put ultra pure water in the cans to determine how stable the lining of the can was when just faced with water being in contact with it for 24 hours.
The results were concerning.
Every single product here put out an amount of bisphenol A that would be in the danger zone.
The highest levels measured in micrograms were found in cans of Hunt's tomato sauce, followed by Red Pack, Del Monte peas, the Starkist tuna, and the Rubbermaid plastic container.
This is a chemical that can alter the way your cells function at below a trillionth of a gram. 1 million times lower than this.
And he says if the research on animals doesn't concern you, this will. Dr. Von Saul says when he places bisphenol A leached water into a test tube with breast cancer cells, the cancer cells multiply rapidly.
These amounts would massively stimulate these cells.
Bisphenol A is big business here in the United States. It is estimated that the chemical companies produce 7 billion pounds of it a year, and it's making its way into our bodies. According to the CDC, 95% of Americans have detectable levels of bisphenol A in their urine. Dr. Von Saul says the worst thing anyone can do is microwave food in a plastic container covered in plastic wrap.
Just stop doing that immediately. The hotter a product becomes, the greater the amount of bisphenol A that will come out of it.
We need to have balanced presentations about chemicals in the environment.
Sharon Knies is vice president of the American Chemistry Council, a trade organization that represents the chemical companies. She says bisphenol A is safe to use.
Bisphenol A has been very heavily studied, and it's been studied by many of the regulatory agencies around the world.
Yeah,
And
right.
that bisphenol
Yeah,
A.
stuttering.
The FDA
Come
tells
on,
us it is
man.
actively reviewing the safety of bisphenol A, and in a statement adds, considering all the evidence, including the very low dietary exposure to BPA, and the fact that bisphenol A has not demonstrated adverse effects when consumed by animals in amounts far higher than humans would consume, FDA sees no reason at this time to ban or otherwise restrict the uses now authorized.
It has never been banned by any country around the world, and we're confident in its use.
Dr. Bob Stahl says the FDA and other federal agencies are working with antiquated data.
There are 700 published scientific studies about the health effects of bisphenol A that the FDA has never gotten around to looking at.
We contacted the parent companies for the products we tested, and in individual statements, the companies reiterated that bisphenol A is used in their products because it has been deemed safe and it is approved by the FDA. I'm Mary Garofeld.
Now, I'm going to skip one of these because I want you to see this. This is in Canada. Cancer finally cured. Watch this. It says cancer finally cured in Canada, but Big Pharma has no interest.
Applications and is relatively cheap. But as CTV's medical specialist Avis Favreau explains, redeveloping the drug may not fit into the business plans of the big pharmaceutical companies.
tumor.
Dr. Evangelos Mikalakis has given cancer researchers a brand new lead with an old drug, a cheap, inexpensive powder that costs just pennies a dose.
You typically get this eureka kind of feeling, and it's actually the most exciting thing scientists can get.
The drug, called DCA in short, has been used for decades in humans with some rare inherited diseases. When he added it to the water of mice and rats given human cancers, the results surprised him.
He has this big tumor growing in his back, so you can see that even after 3 weeks there is a significant or 70% decrease in tumor size.
It shrunk brain, breast, and lung tumors in the animals in a matter of weeks, and the drug had no side effects, confirmed by tests of DCA in humans for other diseases.
This kind of results, to my mind, are as good as it gets.
And it seems to work by reviving the energy-producing components of human cells, allowing the cells to work normally again, triggering cancerous cells to commit suicide. Scientists agree that DCA now needs to be tested quickly in human cancer patients.
This is exactly what we want, a drug that has activity, but has also minimal side effects for patients.
But there's a problem. DCA isn't owned by any pharmaceutical company. There's no patent on it. So on one hand, it could become a very inexpensive new treatment for cancer. On the other, drug companies won't be interested in funding studies for a drug that won't make them a profit.
This is a difficult question because typically, there are market considerations.
So now Dr. Mikalakis has to find someone who will pay for the next round of testing.
We hope that we can attract the interest of universities here in Canada and in the United States.
And he doesn't want to let the medical dream of a cheap, effective anti-cancer drug disappear, just because it might not make someone a lot of money. It costs, some say, about $100 million to get a new drug through all the phases of testing onto the market. So it will be interesting to see if this old drug actually gets a new chance at becoming an anti-cancer medication. Lloyd?
Well, Avis, your report tells us that this drug has great promise, so why aren't companies and institutions lining up to get behind it?
Well, first of all, Lloyd, this is the initial report. Secondly, because the drug isn't patented, it's an old drug, if someone invests in researching it, they're not going to make a profit because anyone can make it. So we'll have to see. There are some agencies, public agencies, government agencies that may give it funding, but that's still a question that will have to be answered.
But unless big pharmaceutical companies are behind these things, they may go nowhere, is that it?
Well, actually, Lloyd, I've had 2 other stories where drugs have shown great promise in the preclinical phase, and because they were orphan drugs and no one picked up, nobody could get the patent on it, they've gone nowhere. So I will be keeping an eye on this one.
Thank you very much, Avis.
Now,
application.
So it shows you there's more money in the treatment than there is for the cure.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not
Exactly.
they're not trying to cure anything.
No.
Okay. But now, watch this. I want you to see this. I'm gonna change the order. I want to show you this. I want you to see this. This man. Okay. This is a guy talking about what happened in Germany. Okay.
Since 1850, when the Jews got all the political rights in Germany, in the German Reich, they have done 3 things which are really dramatic. Number 1, they were a small minority of 2% of the population. At the time when Hitler came to power, 500,000 within 60 million German people. 500,000 among 60 million. They were a small minority. This small minority managed to control about 50% of the media, to give about 70% of all judges, to have a tremendous influence in movie and in theater and in literature. They were overrepresented. This is one thing. They were absolutely overrepresented, as today in England, in France, and in the United States. Second, Jews were at the origin of a lot of catastrophic financial bank crashes in Germany between 1870 and 1920. in that time. They made a lot of crashes which have, this is all documented. I mean, it's not Nazi propaganda or anti-Semitic or Arab propaganda. It's a lot of books have been published, even by Jewish Germans, about this problem. They have millions of German fathers have lost their incomes, their fortune, their savings because of these Jewish gangsters, bank gangsters and speculations people. Then the third point, which was psychologically the most dangerous of all, they have introduced into German art and culture and theater and movie decadence, immorality. The first homosexual theaters, plays, were made in Berlin in the 1920s. The first adultery theater plays were made in the 1880s and 1890s, 100 years ago, by Jewish authors. Adultery, then sexual perversions of all sorts, sadism, masochism, a lot of homosexuality, all these things, and then decadent art, you know, an art which is absolutely ridiculous, so-called modern art. It was all pushed by Jewish intellectuals, and this created among the German people a big revolt. And they wrote books ridiculing Christianity, ridiculing Jesus. I mean, it was something like Salman Rushdie with the Muslims. And there were furious reactions in Germany. And this is why Adolf Hitler came to power. And you see then Hitler in 2 years, from 33 to 35, he got 6 million Germans were unemployed. And within 2 years, he brought 6 million unemployed Germans back into their jobs. He created 6 million jobs. It's incredible.
Now, interesting. But isn't that similar to what's happening here?
Yeah, that's what I was just sitting here thinking.
All right, now watch. Let me show you something. This was something my son sent me, right? Check this out. That's what they were selling on Amazon.
Oh,
What?
Yeah.
What is
It says Daddy's Little Slut. These were t-shirts that they were selling on Amazon, right? And watch, they do some more, watch.
Oh my.
My bucket list, beer and ice. Beer, ice. Yes, I'm single, and if you have to be effing awesome to change that.
Right.
These are shirts for little girls. Cutie, a cute but psycho, but cute. All right.
The bucket list: 1 beer, 1 ice, 2 ice.
Right. Daddy's Little Slut. See this? Look at this one. This is the worst one. Daddy's Little F toy.
What?
Okay. Then you have what this? That one said. Oh no, Daddy's Little. That might be another Daddy's Little Slut, but it was another one. What did it say? I just look legal. That's one of the other ones that it had. Okay. Think about what the man was talking about. These perversions and the stuff that they're pushing. All right, but now watch. Here's the next one. This one, oh wait a minute. Let me read what I put in what's called. It said Amazon was forced to yank baby jumpsuits emblazoned with the revolting slogans such as Daddy's Little F toy and Daddy's Little Slut from its shelves after a massive backlash over the tasteless duds, which critics say are aimed at pedophiles.
Wow.
Okay. Now,